and said to them, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I can find no case against him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to the law, he ought to die because he had claimed to be the Son of God."
Okay, so do you understand what's going on? Okay, the Bible claims the Jews killed Jesus. All right, so this shows us that the Bible is not that reliable. All right. Okay, so let's go into the story of Paul. Alan, can you please? Okay, so let me give you the context. Okay, this is from the Acts of the Apostles, and it's mainly about Paul and he became a follower of Jesus. And at this time, Paul is persecuting Christians. We don't know why he's persecuting Christians. We don't know why the Jews hate the Christians, but Paul is going around persecuting the Christians as a Pharisee. And then on the way to persecuting more Christians on the road to Damascus, a light seizes him. And it's Jesus telling him, "Paul, why are you persecuting me and my followers?" And then that converts Paul. It makes no sense as a story, okay? But this is what Christians believe. Okay, can you read, Alan?
Meanwhile, Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues.
Okay, the synagogue is a place of worship for diaspora Jews, because Jews worship the temple, right? But the temple's in Jerusalem. So if you're outside Jerusalem, then you go to a synagogue, okay? Which is basically a Jewish church.
Synagogues and Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank.
Okay, so this is a miracle, right? This guy hated Christians, and now, because he was blinded, he loves Christians. What you will notice is this is very similar to Plato's allegory of the cave. Because remember, Paul is trained in Greek culture, so he knows about Plato. And this is model of the allegory of the cave, where you're in darkness and suddenly you go out and you're blinded by the light. And then you see the truth, okay? Another thing that's important is that clearly Jesus favors Paul. What's interesting is that if you read Paul's letters, and we will read his letters, if you read Paul's story, he doesn't really talk about Jesus that much. He doesn't even quote Jesus, okay? So that's kind of weird. If you're a follower of Jesus, but you really don't quote Jesus, and Jesus has a lot of quotations, you really don't talk about Jesus that much. And he doesn't really refer to the story that much in his letters. The other thing that I will note is that if you read Jesus, okay, Jesus doesn't really talk about good and evil, doesn't really talk about the Bible, doesn't really talk about himself as a son of God, but Paul will talk about this a lot, okay? All right, so again, Paul's amazing because he'll go on 3 different voyages, missionary journeys around the Roman Empire in order to spread the gospel of Jesus. This is very, very hard work. It's also expensive work, okay? Because you can see how he's going from different cities, he's going to synagogues, and he's preaching the gospel. Okay. What's important for us to understand is that as Paul is doing this,